Chapter 2, Welcome to Buttonville. Here we are, Grandpa Abe announced as he exited the highway. The sign at the side of the road read, Welcome to Buttonville, the nicest town on earth. Grandpa Abe drove down Main Street. The evening sky had darkened, but the corner streetlights shone brightly, casting their glow on the little town. Ben frowned. It didn't look like the nicest town on earth. It looked like the saddest town on earth. There were no bright awnings, no corner fruit stands, no sidewalk tables where people sipped fancy drinks. Instead, many of the little shops that lined Main Street were empty, with signs in the windows, closed, vacancy, for rent, out of business. This town hasn't been the same since the button factory shut down, Grandpa Abe explained. Most of the young families moved away to find work. Ben had heard about the button factory. His mother kept a big bowl of buttons in the entertainment room back at home in Los Angeles. Those buttons were made by your grandfather, she told him. He worked in a button factory most of his life. How come the button factory shut down? Ben asked, peering over the seat. Customers stopped wanting handmade buttons like these, Grandpa Abe replied, pointing to the big wooden buttons on the front of his shirt. People should be so lucky to get handmade buttons, but it's cheaper to buy the plastic ones made by a machine. Ben's gaze traveled up the wooden buttons and rested on his grandfather's wrinkled face. He hadn't seen his grandfather in 6 years. Ben's dad said it was because Grandpa Abe didn't like to travel. Because Ben had been only 4 years old at the time, he didn't understand anything about the last visit. In the photos at home, Grandpa Abe had dark hair just like Ben and Ben's dad, but today not a single hair remained on his shiny scalp. Ben must have been staring pretty hard because his grandfather turned and winked at him. You look different too, Grandpa Abe said. Your hair is shorter. Ben ran his hand over his hair, which was cut to precisely 3/4 of an inch every 2 weeks. He thought about making up a story that his hair had been cut short because he'd been infested with Caribbean head lice, or because the ends had caught fire when he'd been struck by lightning. The real reason Ben had short hair was because his mother insisted it was stylish. She always took him to her hairdresser in Beverly Hills rather than to a barber shop where the other boys went. The Cadillac pulled up to a stop sign just opposite a shop called the Dollar Store. A girl leaned out of the store's upstairs window. It wasn't her fuzzy pink bathrobe that caught Ben's attention, or the way her long blonde hair glowed in the lamplight. What caught his attention was the way she was staring at the sky with her mouth wide open, as if seeing something very strange. Ben unfastened his seatbelt, rolled down the opposite window, and stuck his head out. Cool night air tickled his nose and ears. A shadow darted between two clouds. A shadow with enormous wings and a long rope-like tail. If Ben had blinked, he would have missed it. The girl looked down at Ben. Their eyes met. She'd seen it too. Then she mouthed a single word before disappearing behind the curtains. You want me to catch a cold? Grandpa Abe complained. As Ben closed the window and buckled his seatbelt, Grandpa Abe drove through the intersection and turned onto a side street. Ben wrapped his arms around the hamster cage again. He wasn't an expert at reading lips, but he was pretty certain he knew what word the girl had said. Dragon.